4 pages for Sir Duncan the Tall in the White Book of the Kingsguard. What a man he must have been. But before his days in the Kingsguard, Dunk was but a lowly orphan boy, and that is where the story of Sir Duncan the Tall begins. Dunk was born in King's Landing, not the noble lands of the capital, but the slums of Flea Bottom with the rest of the peasants. When Dunk was young, he met a knight, Sir Arlan of Pennytree. Sir Arlan took Dunk as his squire, and they travelled all over Westeros. They served Lord Leo Tyrell at Highgarden, visited King's Landing in 205 AC, served Lord Florent for half a year, and joined Lord Dondarrion in the hunt for the Vulture King, and visited Lannisport, amongst other places. Dunk learned sword fighting from Sir Arlan, and ever since the first time that Arlan had let Dunk hold a sword, Dunk had dreamt of becoming a knight of the Kingsguard. In 209 AC, Sir Arlan of Pennytree died. Dunk and Arlan were on the way to a tourney at Ashford Meadow, and Dunk decided to compete in the tourney in Arlan's stead. At an inn along the way, Dunk meets a bald-headed boy who begged Dunk to be allowed to become his squire when Dunk left. Dunk refused, left, and shortly thereafter arrived at Ashford. Dunk made camp, and that evening discovered the bald boy from the inn at his camp. When the boy assumed that Dunk's name was short for Duncan, Dunk agreed, calling himself Sir Duncan the Tall. The boy claimed to be called Egg. Because he did not have a squire, Dunk accepted Egg as his squire for the duration of the tourney. Once, at the tourney grounds, Duncan was forced to sell one of his horses and Arlan's old armour in order to buy armour of his own from Steely Pate. He met a puppeteer named Tansel, who was performing at a stall on the tourney grounds. The day after Dunk's arrival, he went to register for the tourney. Identifying himself as Sir Duncan the Tall, Dunk told Plummer, Lord Ashford's steward, how Arlan had knighted him before his death. Plummer suggested that Duncan find someone to vouch for him and return the next day. Unable to find anyone, Duncan returned to the castle the next day, where he accidentally interrupted Prince Baelor and Prince Maekar Targaryen, who were occupied with the missing Princes Daeron and Aegon, 2 of Maekar's sons. After Duncan explained his problem to the princes, Baelor recalled jousting against Arlan years before and vouched for Duncan, allowing his participation. When Tansel was attacked by Prince Aegon Targaryen, Duncan rushed to her defense, attacking the prince in the process. When Aerion's guards intervened, Egg protected Duncan from further harm by revealing his identity as Prince Aegon. Duncan was arrested and brought to the castle, where Prince Baelor informed him how Prince Daeron had claimed to his father that the missing Aegon had been kidnapped by a robber knight, while Aerion was twisting the puppeteer story into treason. Due to the lies of both Aerion and Daeron, Maekar became furious with Duncan. Baelor was forced to allow Aerion a trial, and Aerion demanded a trial of 7. With help from Aegon, Duncan found 6 allies, including Prince Baelor Targaryen. To his surprise, Duncan discovered that the small folk supported him, as he had remembered his vows as a knight by protecting Tansel. During the combat, Duncan eventually found himself facing Aerion one-on-one, and he managed to best Aerion by using his strength and his fighting skills from Flea Bottom. Duncan forced Aerion to yield. As Daeron had already faked his defeat, Duncan was declared cleared free of all charges. But Prince Baelor Targaryen died during the trial. At Baelor's funeral pyre, Dunk tries to make sense of why the gods deemed that such a great man should fall and a Hedge Knight live. A couple of days later, Maekar visits Dunk, remorseful in his knowledge that it was his mace that killed Baelor. But Dunk feels he was as much at fault for Baelor's death, saying, "How could my foot be worth a prince's life?" Maekar offers Dunk a position at Summerhall if he takes Prince Aegon as his squire. But Dunk wishes Egg to learn the way he did, by travelling on the road and braving the hardships, and afterward he might take up Maekar's offer. The next morning, Egg arrives at Dunk's camp, and the two have an urge to visit Dorne and perhaps catch a puppeteer's show. Duncan and Aegon travelled to Dorne, passing through the Prince's Pass and eventually reaching Vaith, where Duncan accidentally insulted Lady Casella Vaith, the first highborn woman he had ever met. While in 209 AC and 210 AC, the Great Spring Sickness ran its course through Westeros, Duncan and Aegon were able to avoid encountering this plague as they were in Dorne, one of the two places where the plague had not come. Duncan and Aegon took a poleboat down the Greenblood to Planky Town. Aboard the ship, Duncan had his first experience of combat at sea when he helped repel some raiders. In Old Town, Duncan and Aegon were gifted a mule, Maester, by Aegon's brothers Aemon. Duncan and Aegon took service with Sir Eustace Osgrey at Standfast in the Reach. Also employed was Sir Bennis of the Brown Shield, an old acquaintance of Duncan from his time with Arlan. Duncan and Bennis discovered that peasants of the widowed Rohan Webber had dammed the cheeky water. Since Eustace refused to travel to Coldmoat, Duncan went to the castle to try to reason with Lady Webber. Though sexual tension charged their meeting, Rohan refused Duncan and told him about Eustace's support of Daemon Blackfyre during the Blackfyre Rebellion. Shocked by the revelation, Duncan attempted to leave Eustace's service, but a fire in the nearby woods caused him to suspect that Rohan had already started her campaign against Eustace. Duncan knew that the battle was a lost cause. He disbanded Eustace's meagre levies, but promised to be by his side when he faced Rohan. Meeting with her forces, Duncan cut his own cheek, claiming he was the one who attacked Rohan's peasant. Lady Webber and Sir Eustace refused to back down, however, and they decided upon trial by combat. Duncan represented the elderly Eustace, and Rohan's champion was her overbearing castellan, Sir Lucas Inchfield. Duncan's wrestling ability compensated for his lack of swordsmanship, and he managed to kill Lucas Longinch, though Duncan received major wounds himself and almost drowned in the stream in which they had been fighting. After recuperating, Duncan discovered that Eustace and Rohan had settled their differences and decided to marry. Duncan felt rejected, but was confronted by Rohan shortly before he left. He took one kiss from Rohan and cut off a length of her signature braid as a keepsake, after which he and Aegon took their leave. Duncan and Aegon travelled to the Riverlands, where they visited Stony Sept. Though they had been on their way to take up service with Lord Beron Stark against the Ironborn on the northern coast, they changed their destination after a chance meeting on the road. They encountered a group led by Gorman Peake, Lord of Starpike, Lord Alan Cockshaw, and a Hedge Knight named Sir John the Fiddler. The latter invited Duncan to attend the wedding of Ambrose Butterwell, Lord of Whitewalls, to the daughter of Lord Frey, stating that the victor's prize at the celebratory wedding tourney at Whitewalls was to be a dragon egg. Though the company travelled on without him, Duncan decided to go as well, and he befriended the fellow Hedge Knights, Sir Kyle the Cat, Sir Maynard Plum, and Sir Glendon Ball on his way to Whitewalls. At Whitewalls, Aegon became suspicious about the intentions of the wedding, and he informed Duncan that the majority of the nobles present had fought for House Blackfyre during the Blackfyre Rebellion. Duncan later had an encounter with John the Fiddler, who told him that Duncan had appeared to him in a dream in which Duncan had worn the all-white armor of the Kingsguard. The Fiddler said his dreams always came true, stating that he had dreamed his brothers dead once, and though they had not believed him, they had died. The Fiddler also informed Duncan that he had dreamed about a dragon hatching from an egg at Whitewalls. Duncan entered the joust as the Gallows Knight, a mystery knight named for the hanged man's sigil on his shield. Duncan was defeated in his first tilt by Ser Uthor Underleaf, who confessed that someone had attempted to bribe him to kill Duncan in the final tilt. Whilst searching for Aegon, Duncan ran into Glendon, who had been far more successful than Duncan during the tourney, and invited him to come north after the tourney, which Glendon declined. Glendon told Duncan that Lord Peake had offered him a place at Starpike, on the condition that Glendon would let the Fiddler win. Glendon had refused, angering Gorman. Duncan next ran into the fiddler and began to realize Jon's true identity, as well as that the tourney had been rigged as to make the fiddler victorious. Lord Peake accused Glendon Ball of stealing the dragon egg, and the youth was imprisoned. When Duncan attempted to intervene, Alan Cockshaw pulled him back, telling Duncan to follow him if he wanted to find Aegon. Aelin attempted to kill Duncan out of jealousy for the attention the fiddler had shown Duncan. Though injured, Duncan threw Aelin down a well to drown, an action witnessed by Maynard Plum. Maynard helped Duncan see to his injuries and informed him of Aegon's location. Aegon falsely told Lord Butterwell that he and Duncan were spies sent to investigate the tournament, and that his father, Prince Maekar Targaryen, was on his way with an army. Frightened, Ambrose pled for his innocence. Sir Tomard Heddle attempted to seize Aegon in the sept, but was slain by Duncan in the combat that ensued. Duncan ordered Aegon to ride for Maidenpool, and he confronted the fiddler, calling him by his true name, Daemon Blackfyre, second of his name. Duncan accused Lord Peake of bribing the contestants in Daemon's favour, and of falsely charging Glendon with the theft of the dragon egg. Furious about the accusations, Daemon challenged Glendon with a joust as a means of trial by combat. Glendon defeated Daemon Blackfyre easily early the next morning, and moments later a loyalist army, led by Lord Brynden Rivers, the Hand of the King, arrived at Whitewalls. Daemon was arrested, and those who had supported him executed or punished, causing the Second Blackfyre Rebellion to be suppressed before it had even begun. Lord Brynden allowed Duncan and Aegon to continue their travels, and hinted as to how the dragon's egg had been stolen, leading Duncan to realize the involvement of the dwarfs who had performed at the wedding. An unknown amount of time after Whitewalls, Duncan and Aegon visited Winterfell. Presumably in honor of Sir Duncan, Prince Aegon Targaryen named his firstborn son and heir Duncan. Prince Duncan Targaryen was called Duncan the Small. In late 233 AC, after Aegon had ascended the throne as king, Duncan escorted the king's brother, Maester Aemon, to Eastwatch by the Sea, where Aemon was going to join the Night's Watch. With them was Brynden Rivers, otherwise known as Bloodraven, who too was joining the watch. Sir Duncan eventually joined the Kingsguard. While it is unknown when exactly he took his vows, the first known mention of him as a Kingsguard knight is in 236 AC. In 236 AC, Sir Duncan fought in the Fourth Blackfyre Rebellion and personally slew Daemon Blackfyre, third of his name. In 239 AC, when Prince Duncan Targaryen broke his betrothal to Lord Lionel Baratheon's daughter and married a common-born girl known as Jenny of Oldstones instead, the enraged Lionel renounced his fealty to the Iron Throne. Sir Duncan the Tall served as King Aegon's champion in the trial by combat, in which he bested Lionel, thereby ending his short rebellion. Shortly after Duncan was named to be Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, much is unknown about Dunk's time as a member of the Kingsguard. But in 259 AC, Dunk joined Egg at Summerhall with the rest of the Targaryens in order to celebrate the impending birth of his first great-grandchild to Aerys and Rhaella. But tragedy struck. The cause of the fire is as yet unknown, but was connected with King Aegon's desire to restore dragons to the Seven Kingdoms. Summerhall's Maester Corso sent a letter before his death, describing the tragedy, but a mishap led to ink blotting out much of the information. The blood of the dragon gathered in 7 eggs to honor the 7 gods, though the king's own septon had warned. Pyromancers, wildfire, flames grew out of control, towering, burned so hot that died, but for the valor of the Lord Commander. Many died, and fire destroyed the castle, leaving it a ruin. Lord Commander Duncan saved many that day, but perished alongside King Aegon and Prince Duncan Targaryen. At least, that is what is believed currently in the world of Westeros. Recently, Dexter Sol Ansel, who plays Egg in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, revealed that George R. Martin told them that Dunk survived the tragedy at Summerhall. Though everyone in Westeros believed Dunk died at the castle, Dunk may have slid into hiding after the tragedy for some unknown reason that only George can tell. And this is the story of Sir Duncan the Tall, the most honourable knight in the Seven Kingdoms, from orphan in Flea Bottom to Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, well deserving of his 4 pages in the White Book.